What are we hearing from Apple as it relates to some of these issues with its watch?
Apple never gets into these situations. In fact, when the ITC ruling came down at the end of October, actually October 26th, 2 months ago to today, I think the initial reaction from everyone, including myself, to be honest, was that Apple's going to find a way to get out of this. They're either going to settle, they're going to convince the Biden administration to issue a veto, they're going to get a software update out before the watch ban goes into place. But no, so they have some egg on their face, like I said earlier, getting to this point. It is a little bit of embarrassment for the company. In terms of the impact of the Apple Watch ban on the company, this couldn't come at a worse time for Masimo, I should say, right? If Masimo really wanted to inflict pain on Apple, this ban should have come into place months ago. They believed and hoped the ban would come into place a long time ago. They actually pitched the ITC, complained to the ITC about this 2 years ago. But for Apple, you're talking about losing about only 5 days of sales in the current quarter at only Apple's own retail stores and the online store. A lot of those orders and those sales have already been configured in to their Q1 earnings, so I don't anticipate much of a headwind on the Q1 announcement at the end of January or early February. This is something, if this continues to bleed into February, March, this may get an impact on Q2 or Q3, but I don't believe there's going to be a big negative headwind on Apple's financials at this point. And in terms of what they're saying, they're appealing to everyone other than the Pope, to who they believe can get this thing reversed. They've gone to the federal circuit. They asked the ITC for a stay. They're submitting a new Apple Watch software update to the U.S. Customs Agency. They're hoping that gets approved by mid-January. So right now we're at a wait-and-see approach.
Mark, can you fill us in? We heard from Masimo. We understand why Joe Kiani is taking such issue, why he's fighting this fight, even though it costs him. Why isn't Apple settling? Do you have any idea of what they feel it is in the advantage for them to keep fighting?
If you settle all of these patent disputes, especially at the gigantic numbers that a settlement with Masimo would require, you're talking about setting a precedent of other companies with patents looking for places where Apple is infringing, right? Apple has made very quietly $400,000, $500,000 settlements with individual patent owners for many years that no one knows about, right? They have the ability to write those checks without telling anyone. They've had small multi-million-dollar settlements. But Masimo, as a public company, this is something that the whole world is paying attention to. Certainly, we've been talking about it all day for the last 2 weeks or so. So certainly, they don't want to set that precedent. The other thing is they truly believe they did nothing wrong here. They don't believe they stole the technology. And given how public and how open Joe Kiani and Masimo have been about these issues, it doesn't portend to Apple a place where Apple would want to engage. Apple doesn't like to engage with people who are talking very publicly about their issues with Apple. So I think that's another component there as well.
Does Apple have a credible case, like in defense here? I mean, I don't know. It just seems like the Masimo people, these are the folks that really traffic in this stuff and really are doing the work here. Does Apple have a credible defense, do you think?
I can't give you an opinion on whether or not it's credible, but I can tell you what people in the Apple world, including their lawyers, are arguing. Let me break it down for you because this is it's actually quite interesting and quite complex. Okay. So Masimo, over the years, has made a ton of money from patent infringement lawsuits. There's a company called Medtronic, which acquired a company called Norcal many years ago that developed devices, medical devices, and then there's Philips. Masimo sued both of those companies, got huge multi-year licensing agreement settlements with them over the similar patents or the same patents that Apple and Masimo are at war over right now. And those licensing agreements were struck 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? Those have started to dry up. The revenue that Masimo has gotten from Philips and Medtronic, that has gone away over the past several quarters. Some are making the argument that Apple is in the crosshairs of Masimo because Masimo is looking for a new revenue stream, new licensing agreements to prop up their revenue, right? That's one angle. Now, at the same time, as Joe showed Caroline on Bloomberg TV last week, they've developed their own smartwatch. He showed Caroline the W1. That's their first smartwatch. Looks a lot like the Apple Watch. And by the way, Apple's suing Masimo because it looks a lot like the Apple Watch. They have another watch coming out. It's called the Freedom Watch. That's going to be a round design. It looks like the Google Pixel Watch. That's coming. They have pre-orders already. That's at $1,000. They're hoping that becomes popular. So what Apple lawyers believe is that Masimo is trying to shun Apple out of the market, not going to happen long term, of course, in order to both get new licensing revenue from Apple, but to also create space in the wearables market for their own WN Watch and upcoming Freedom Watch. That's the Apple argument. Now, Masimo's lawyers, their argument is that that's not what Masimo's doing here. They're simply going after Apple because they believe Apple has stolen their IP. And Masimo is saying they're simply not creative or vindictive enough to come up with such an intricate plan like that. But you can see both sides of the argument here.